أما بعد فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى وقوله الحق وهو أصدق القائلين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات بيجي محمد وعلى Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Before I begin, let's extend our condolences in the bargah of our 12th Imam, Wali Asr Muslimin, Imam al-Hujjah, Imam Mahdi Ajalallahu Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif, that we are commemorating the shahadat of his grandmother, the only daughter of Rasulullah, the wife of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Yasubuddin, and the mother of 11 Imams of this ummah, none other than Janab Fatimatul Zahra, Salamullahi alayha. And this is indeed the occasion where we see that the whole Muslim Ummah pays homages and tribute to this greatest lady in the history of humanity. And taking that as a token that she is among those whom we revere and whom we follow and we look up to, because she's not just the example for the mankind or the men of the ummah, or not just the example for the women of the ummah, but she's also an example for the men of the ummah. And in that regards, inshallah, I will take this opportunity in these 2 nights that I have to discuss under this verse that I recited from Surah Nisa, verse number 1. And that verse is talking about a special concept, as all the ayat of Quran are miracle. The whole book is a miracle. We will take this opportunity in these 2 nights to evaluate the status of women in Islam. And for that I chose this ayat, which translates as this, that O mankind, fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one who created you from nafsin wahidatin, from a single soul. And then he created from you your own mate. And then وَبَثَّ مِنْهُمَا رِجَالًا كَثِيرًا وَنِسَاءً. And then he scattered from them, these two, many, many men and many, many women. This is the translation. And looking at this ayat specifically, and it is stated and it is situated in a chapter which is a very special chapter, Surah Nisa. If you want to talk about the concept of the status of women in Islam, you see that there's not a single surah in Quran named Surah Rijal or Surah Rajul or for men. Rather, there's only one surah in Quran which is referring to word Nisa. And this is also among the things which elevates the status and shows how Islam, after it came, it dissolved those mentalities that existed at that time in the history, how they looked and perceived women and degraded them. We want to take this opportunity to discuss a few points. Firstly, Islam has observed the actual equality of mankind in regards to men and women. Islam is not against the equality of rights between men and women, but it is against the similarity between the two. So this is where the difference lies. So you got to keep these two terminologies, as I will be referring back to them over and over again. Islam, I'll repeat it, is not against the equality of men and women, but it is against the similarity between the rights of men and women. And we'll explain and elaborate further what is the difference between equality and what is the difference between the similarity. Third, Islam denounces the slandering and disrespectful views against women. Quran keeps a balance when mentioning the history of mankind, that it does not only mention the heroes from the men, but also keeps in mind the heroes from the women's side when it's mentioning and talking about their tales. And lastly, we see scholars of Islam base their reasoning behind the rights on justice and not necessarily on equality. These are the few points, inshallah, we will be discussing in tonight's majlis and in the tomorrow's majlis with the grace of Allah, with the permission of Allah, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us the tawfiq. Salawat bheji Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So the first thing is, as far as the status of women from the perspective of Quran is concerned, we ask this question: what kind of creature does Islam consider women to be? Does it consider them to be equal to men from the perspective of living being, or are they considered lower than the men? Now, what Islam perceives might be different than what Muslims perceive. So we don't get caught up in the phenomena that how Muslims are treating. No, let's go back and see what Islam says about it and not follow what Muslims are saying about it. There's a difference between the two as well. Secondly, we see a special doctrine of Islam in regards to the family rights. We see that Islam has special doctrine for family rights of men and women, and for the past 14 centuries, these rights have been there. They might be different than what the society talks about it today, but Islam, in all matters, in every single matter, we look at it, that it has kept a view as far as the rights of women are concerned. Islam, in all matters, treats men and women differently from the similarity perspective and not from the equality perspective. And I'll say it again. We see that while Islam in all matters never considered similar rights, similar tasks, and similar punishments for men and women. It considered some rights and duties and punishments appropriate for men, some tasks appropriate for men, and some punishments only appropriate for men. And that is what society is doing as well. The punishments are not all the same for men and women. The tasks are not all the same for men and women. And therefore, the responsibilities are not all the same for men and women. Keeping that phenomena in mind, Islam has given the laws and the rights in regards to men and women, not based on equality, rather not based on similarity, rather based on equality. So we'll inshallah go in the details of it. We see that in the end, in some matters, men and women are similar and they have different take in that regards, but in some matters, men and women would be different as far as their take is concerned. Why is that? The question arises, why? Based on what? What is the reasoning behind it? Does Islam consider women to be lower in their creation, like many other schools do, and they talk about it? Even in fact, if you look at the history of mankind up until the 20th century, that was how women were looked down upon. And not too long ago, in the part of the world that we live in, how women were deprived of many of the basic rights. And today, still in many parts of the world, that is the same thing which exists on the basis of just because of their gender, they're deprived. I'm sure you have heard a great deal of criticism against Islamic doctrines when it comes to, the concept of dowry, providing the provision, divorce, polygamy from the Westerners. They raise a lot of these issues. Why does Islam allow polygamy? Why is this word dowry? In other words, are you buying something? Are you selling something? Why this dowry is there? The provision, all of a sudden you have automatically given this to be the right of the man. And then divorce as well. Who remind us all the time that these doctrines are degrading the status of women, and it has no basis except their preferences or preferring men over the women. They say all the doctrines and laws before 20th century were based on considering men to be more honorable than the women, and women were created only to be used by men. Islamic system of rights is also tilted towards favoring the men more than the women. They also say that Islam is a religion of men. It promotes and favors men over the women, and that's why it didn't prescribe equal laws for women. They raise the following arguments, and these arguments are something that we see and we hear all the time. Sometimes we have the proper answer to it. Forget about the answer to it. Let's just, you and I ourselves, understand as to why these things are there before we go ahead and explain it to the others, the Westerners who are posing these questions in front of us. For example, they say if Islam considers women to be full beneficiary of the rights, then why you see that they have allowed polygamy for men? If there was full rights, women should be also allowed polygamy. Why only men allowed? Secondly, the right to divorce would only not be just given to men, but it will also be given to the women. Whereas this is not the case. Islam only gives the right to divorce to men and not the women. Thirdly, the testimony of two women is equal to the testimony of one. Why? If that was the case, equality you're talking about, they would have given both the same exact right. Head of the household would automatically be considered a man. Why don't you consider women to be the head of the household? And inheritance of women, why would it be half of that of men? Why didn't Islam keep the same inheritance for both men and women? If you talk about Islam being a religion of equality, it should have given the equal rights to both men and women. It wouldn't have placed the price in the name of dowry for women. They also raised this question. The mehr, or the dowry that we have, and in fact, it has penetrated our mind so much that this is personal experience that I'm talking about, that a place that I had gone to recite a nikah. When I asked them for the dowry, because they had a lot of their American friends over, they said, Moulana, just keep whatever you want, just don't mention it. We don't want this word dowry to be mentioned because it brings shame upon them. Now, if I want to go ahead and answer all of these questions, there's very logical answers behind them. For example, the first, why polygamy allowed for men and not for women? There's a logical answer behind that. And even today, because, as I said before, Muslims, if they misuse some concept, do not blame Islam for that. And we look at it, that in the time, in the history, polygamy, the reason it was allowed, in the same chapter, if you look at Surah Nisa, verse number 3, it says, وَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ أَلَّا تَعْدِلُوا فِي الْيَتَامَى, then go ahead and marry, مِنَ النِّسَاءِ مثنى وثلاث ورباع. Take 2, 3, or 4. وَلَا تَعْدِلُوا, if you're unable to do justice between them, فَوَاحِدَةً, but keep one. This is the exact ayah number 3 from Surah Nisa. It says if you want to keep injustice, or if you want to keep justice, just keep one. But if you're fearful that you will not be able to do justice, then just stick with one. At one place it says, take care of them with adalat. But then at another place it says, you will never be able to do adalat. So there's no contradiction between these two ayat. It's just telling you that this law was there. The reason behind the law was, and I'm sure you all know better, that it was a time that when Muslims were engaging into a lot of wars, men would go into wars, they would get killed, and then there would be a lot of widows left in the society. You either let these widows on their own, or let other men give the permission to go ahead and marry them. So at least they're provided of shelter. They're living an honorable life. That was something which was there. You say, well, then why didn't Islam lift this after this was no longer the case? No, the case could arrive up until the day of judgment. That's why this concept was not lifted. But if men are misusing this for their own personal gratification, then do not blame what Islam has devised as far as helping these women is concerned. So this was the law, and there's explanation in regards to that. Very, very logical. Second, the right of divorce. Why is it only given to men and not to women? This is again an inequality when you see in Islam. If you look at it, even to this concept, there's an exception. Women can stipulate at the time of nikah, that I want to have the right to divorce. And there's no denying that. Automatically Allah did not leave this. But if she demands this right from the time of getting married, there's no denying in that. If she stipulates that a man, if he stayed away for 6 months, I will have the right to divorce him. You can write that down. She can stipulate if the man went ahead and married another person while he was married to me, I'll divorce him. You can stipulate that as well. All of these things could be stipulated in the marriage contract. So Islam is not denying women that they do not have the right to divorce. But initially it hasn't given, and there's a wisdom behind that. Thirdly, we see that they say, well, as far as the share is concerned, in virasat is concerned, that is also a point where Islam has done injustice to women. Why is the half share for women as opposed to a full share for men? The reason, the logical reason behind it, the wisdom behind it, we see it, is because men are usually given more tasks and responsibilities. Man has to run the house, and even after, a death in a family or death of the wife, he's responsible for others. And even after divorce, he still has to, pay child support and all that stuff. Because of that, Allah has kept more for men than the women. And if you think, for example, that the wife is being deprived, even then there's a way of fixing that. For example, the husband who has a couple of children, that he knows that after his death, his wife will only get 1/8, 12%, 12.5%. He can stipulate and he can use his 1/3 and give that to wife. Therefore, the wife would be receiving 45% of the whole estate. Right away, it is way more than any of the children would be receiving over there. Islam did not leave that initially, but you have the right to go ahead and make this exception. And then all the other issues that I had mentioned before, that, dowry and so on and so forth. Dowry, the reason behind dowry is also very, very clear. Just so that the man does not get in the habit of divorcing without thinking about it. Because if you have this back of your mind that I have to pay this amount, you will refrain. You'll think twice before you go ahead and divorce your wife. So therefore, this is actually there to help and support the women. All of these things have very, very logical answers, and there's a wisdom behind it, but we're not in the position to give the answers over here. We're only trying to say, yes, these things initially are there, and we will answer them initially as it is they are there. Salawat Bheji Muhammad wa ali Muhammad par. So all of these lead us to believe that women are degraded in the Islamic society. They're given a very low status. Islam is a religion of equality, but has used all the equality in other places and left these poor women of no equality, none whatsoever. They say Islam gives preference and distinction to men over women in rights, as is apparent from all of these issues that we talked about. If Islam considered women to be equal creatures, then it would have given them equal and similar rights as of men. Since it didn't give them equal rights, similar to the rights of the women, or similar to the rights of men, therefore Islam considers women to be secondary creatures and low on the scale of this creations. Right away, this is the burhan that you come out with. Because Islam didn't give them the equal rights, and therefore Islam considers them to be lower than that of the status of men. Here the concept is, as I mentioned before, concept of tasawi and tashabuh. The two words that I had mentioned initially. Tasawi and tashabuh. What are these two words? Tasawi means equality. Tashabuh means similarity. These are two different words and terminologies that we need to keep in mind. And this is where there is a difference in rights of men and women. Yes, Islam does not give the equal rights. Yes, Islam does give the equal rights, but Islam does not give the similar rights. That's what I'm trying to explain over here. Islam gives the equal rights, but does not give the similar rights. And similarity lies from the aspect of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created, and He knows the creation of insan. So we see that equality is separate from similarity. Equality is treating everyone equally from the aspect of being human beings, but not necessarily similarly. We see a father, and examples, inshallah, will make it more clear, that might distribute his wealth according to the equality, but not necessarily according to similarity. For example, a father has, multiple wealth, multiple businesses. One business is, he has a firm. He has a, firm which is running some sort of business. Second is that he has some farmland. Third is that he has a business on real estate, for example. Now he knows one of his sons has done masters in business, and so he'll be able to run the firm better than the other ones. Second one, he knows his son has taken interest from the very beginning in the farming, and therefore he will be able to run that better. And the third one, he knows that his son has always been inclined towards the real estate, and he has some expertise in that as well, and he's inclined towards that. Now, as a father, he wouldn't want to deprive anyone as far as the equality is concerned. He would want to give equal share to all of his children. But when he comes and he gives that which is more in value, thinking that the most in value is this firm, and I should give it to my eldest son because he is eldest and he should get the most because of him being advanced in age than the other ones. But this eldest son does not have any expertise in running the firm, or does not have any interest in running that, nor does he have the capability of running that. If he goes ahead and gives it based on equality, then he's actually doing injustice to the wealth that he's leaving behind. This, by rationale, no one will appreciate. Even aql of insan will not appreciate what this person has done. He should go ahead and divide it in a way that it is giving to all of those kids, all of the children, according to their capabilities and whatever they're made of. When he wants to distribute his wealth in his lifetime to his children, he keeps in mind what he is given has same value, and therefore there's no preference on the others. But when he gives and he evaluates them in this fashion, then he's actually making injustice or doing injustice towards this case. Salawat biji Muhammad wa ali Muhammad par. So there's a fine difference between justice and equality. Equality means giving everyone the equal amount, which might not be right in this case over here, because it's not really asked of. But justice means giving everyone what they can handle and what they appropriately deserve. From this example, we can derive how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and inshallah we'll get into the details of as to how are we trying to deduce from this example what the rights that Allah has given to men and the rights that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to the women, and how Islam differentiates between the two. How are we trying to derive that from it? For us to understand this thing, we need to look at the creation of women, we need to look at the creation of mankind, and inshallah from that we'll be able to understand. Salawat biji Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The word equality has developed a sacred notion, and especially when it's coupled with the word, equal rights, equality of the rights, then it becomes really, really special and sacred and holy. And we see that, no one will deviate from bowing down in front of the concept of equal rights. Nobody wants to say, well, no, equal rights should not be given to anyone. What is certain here is that Islam has not legislated similar laws for men and women, the same way it hasn't legislated similar duties and punishment for them either. The same way they don't have the similar punishments. Even today in the society that we live in, it punishes men differently than it punishes the women. When that is the case, when that is the scenario, then the laws are also sort of different. But unfortunately, when they are coming to criticize Islam because Islam has kept these values for 14 centuries, and there's no change in it, but they, as they're moving along, are changing their values. This is where Islam becomes the target of that. And Muslimin haven't done really justice towards Islam either when they go ahead and also fall prey to it. So question arises, are all the rights which have been legislated for women less in value than that for men? Of course not. And we will prove that inshallah through the examples as well. Secondly, the second question that arises is, why is it that Islam that the right of women and men are not similar, or on some occasions they are similar? Wouldn't it have been better that all the rights would have been similar and equal in all essence in all areas? Or would it be better if they were just equal and not similar? These are some of the questions, inshallah, we will try and answer in the next 10 minutes. If you can stick with me, follow along, because it could be a little bit difficult for me to explain, and it'll be a little bit difficult for you to understand as well. With a loud nara salawat. To answer all of the above questions, we need to divide our discussion in 3 points. First, and I might not be able to get through all of these 3 things, so inshallah we'll do that tomorrow. First is view of Islam about women and their status from the perspective of their creation. Second, what is the objective of the differences that exist in the creation of men and women? Do these differences become the reason for not having similar rights for men and women? Is it tabi'i and fitri, natural and innate? Lastly, differences in the doctrines of Islam between men and women, which results in the dissimilar treatment. Are they based on reasoning? What is the reasoning behind it? And are these reasons still hold firm after 14 centuries, or they have sort of expired or died down? We'll look through into these three questions or three aspects. The first one is status of women according to the view of Quran and Islam. The first issue is the Quran is not a collection of laws. Book of law, it's not a book of law just. Because Quran talks about history. Quran gives us advices. Quran is mentioning, the reason behind the creation of mankind. Quran is mentioning the reason behind the creation of all the other creatures that exist. And the philosophy of that as well is being discussed in Quran. So it's not just a book of law. That's one thing. It has more than just a book of law would contain. Secondly, we say Quran as it describes laws and it specifies doctrines. In places it talks about, for example, the secrets of the creation of earth. In some places it talks about the secrets of the creation of mankind and the animals and the plants. It also mentions secrets of death and life, honor for some and dishonor for others, progress and downfall of different societies. It also talks about wealth and poverty that exists in different nations. So it's a book which encompasses so much in it. And it's not just could be called a book, which is just a book of law. Thirdly, Quran is not a book of philosophy either. If someone says Quran is a book of philosophy, no, that is not the case either. Yes, although Quran does not leave out the views in regards to world, humans, and society, all three of which are fundamental issues of philosophy. With authority, Islam talks about all three of these aspects as well. It teaches the followers what the law is. It also explains the creations and gives them the method and methodology to go ahead and adhere and adopt. Among the topics mentioned in Quran is the discussion of the creation of insan, human being, men and women. When you look at all the ayat of Quran, and the first ayah that I had recited, first ayah from Surah Nisa, which said, Ya ayyuhan nas, ittaqu rabbakum alladhi khalaqakum min nafsin wahidatin. O mankind, fear Allah and, fear Allah and be wary of it who created you from a single soul, nafsin wahidatin. Wa khalaqa minha zawjaha. And from within them, He created a soul, He created a mate for you. So not from anywhere else. He created a mate for you from over there. And then from these two, He created rijalan kathiran wa nisa'an. Many men and many women are coming. Numerous men and women are being created from this couple right here. And obviously it is referring towards Hazrat Adam and Hazrat Havva salamullahi alayhima. We see that, right away, there's this notion that Islam is against the women. It talks against and degrades the women to the extent that it's the women who are the evil behind all the evils that exist. And if you look at the story of Adam and Havva as well, who was the culprit behind it? Who was the one who led Adam towards this mistake? If you look at Quran, if you look at and study all the ayat, not at one place does Islam or Quran blame Hazrat Havva for what happened to Hazrat Adam. Not at one place does it blame her, singles her out. Rather, every place the pronoun which is being used is dual pronoun. Lahuma, takuna, shajarata. Stay away from the both of you, stay away. Both of you were misled. Both of you were done. So in all places it is talking about that. But going back, it says all about mankind that وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَنْ خَلَقَ لَكُم مِنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا. And of His signs is that He has created you for your mates from your own selves. There's no mention in Quran for the deviated thoughts that exist that women are inferior to men. No, their creation from the very beginning, both of their creation is from the single source. Therefore, when their creation is coming from the single source, there's no way of denying that they are different than one another. They both are coming from the same source. It doesn't say that women were created from the leftover dough that Allah used for Hazrat Adam. Or it doesn't say that Allah created women or after He created Hazrat Adam from his, ribs or something. Such concepts that exist and have come Quran. If they are going against the teachings of Quran, you throw them away. Those concepts are not really worth even mentioning, because we see in Surah Araf 3 verses, number 20, number 21, and number 22. All of these 3 instances, Quran uses the dual pronoun. What does it say in regards to both of them? فَوَسْوَسَ لَهُمَا. Both of them were misled by shaitan. Then it said, فَدَلَّاهُمَا بِغُرُورٍ. So he made them fall in deception, both of them. وَقَاسَمَهُمَا إِلَىٰ in anni lakuma laminas nasihin, and he swore to both of them that I indeed am your well-wisher. All of these instances, if you look at it, that is, Quran is mentioning the pronoun for dual. Not in single place is it blaming Hazrat Havva for whatever happened, that they were derived away or derived or kicked out of the paradise. This is how Quran has tried to end the common view which blames the women unnecessarily. Other such views which we see in regards to women, that they cannot reach the higher statuses of spirituality as compared to the men, that is also something which is not correct, because Quran clearly says the only criteria for your honor is taqwa. It does not say it is related to one gender, that only men can achieve those statuses, and women, there's no way that they will be able to associate or reach those statuses. Nowhere, if you look in the stories that is mentioned in Quran, where Quran is mentioning the stories of the heroes in the history of mankind, at the same time it's also mentioning the stories of the women who were considered to be the heroes as well. We see the history of Hazrat Adam. Alongside with Hazrat Adam, we have the story of Hazrat Havva as well. We hear about the story of Hazrat Ibrahim. Right away there's a mention of the wife of Hazrat Ibrahim as well. We hear the story of Hazrat Musa and Hazrat Isa. Right away there's the story of the mothers of Hazrat Musa and the mothers of Hazrat Isa as well. What does it say? We gave wahi to mother of Musa to put his son, or give her son the milk that he required, and if you fear his health, then throw him into the river and we will return him back to you. Same thing in regards to Hazrat Maryam, that even the Nabi of the time of Hazrat Maryam, Janab Zakaria, is actually staggered when he sees, and he comes to see that whenever he comes to see Hazrat Maryam, there's always food with her. She's always in conversation with the angels. She has reached such high statuses that even the Nabi of the time is staggered by the status that is possessed by Janab Maryam salamullahi alayha. So we see that in the history of Islam, there are not many people, there are many holy women that have been discussed who possess such high statuses, and we can't even imagine to the extent as to what their status might be. Not many can reach. If you come to Islam, not many can reach the level of Hazrat Khadija, and no one among the history in the human beings could reach the level of Janab Fatmatul Zahra, aside from the 2 personalities, Prophet Muhammad and Amirul Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib. Salawat bheji Muhammad wa ali Muhammad pa. So as far as Hazrat Khadija is concerned, you might not find many examples comparable to her. But when the talk of Janab Sayyida is concerned, you will not find anyone comparable to the status of Janab Sayyida. Leave alone Prophet Muhammad and Amirul Mu'mineen. She's above every human being aside from Prophet Muhammad and Amirul Mu'mineen. She's above every single imam that comes after her. She's the mother of all these imams. She's higher in rank to all of those imams. And at the same time, on the same token, she's higher than the rank of all of the Anbiya and the Prophets as well. So only 2 personalities are before her. That is the wujud of Janab Rasulullah and the wujud of Amirul Mu'mineen. No one even reaches the rank as high as the rank of Janab Fatmatul Zahra. Salamullahi alayha. Salawat biji Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So Islam does not differentiate in sayrum min al-khalq ila al-haq. Just last, and inshallah we'll end with it. That Islam does not differentiate between sayrun min al-khalq ila al-haq. What does that mean? The journey towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala between men and women, there's no difference. But there is a difference which is created from haq ila al-khalq, from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala towards mankind. And in return, Allah towards mankind, the responsibility of prophets and the leaders, He considered men to be more deserving to this status. But other than that, you see, sayr min al-khalq ila al-haq, there's no difference between the two creations. کوئی فرق نہیں ہے دونوں میں. دونوں چاہیں تو اس اسٹیٹس کو حاصل کر سکتی ہیں, دونوں چاہیں تو اس مقام والا پر فائز ہو سکتی ہیں, لیکن اس کے باوجود اس طرف سے اگر آپ دیکھیں من الحق الی الخلق اگر آنا چاہتے ہیں تو ادھر خداوند متعال نے خود اس چیز کو رکھا ہے, جو رسپانسبلٹی دی ہے. اگر معصومین میں اگر امام بنایا ہے, اگر پروفٹس میں, نبی میں اور انبیاء بنائے ہیں, تو ان کے درمیان یہ خود ڈفرنس جو ہے وہ خداوند متعال نے رکھا ہے. لیکن بہرحال واپس جاتے ہوئے انشاءاللہ کچھ جناب سیدہ کے حوالے سے کل آپ کی خدمت میں عرض کروں گا کہ ہم بارہا ان کے فضائل سنتے رہتے ہیں, اور صرف اتنا ہی کافی ہے ان کے فضائل کے بارے میں کہ جب رسول اکرم کی زندگی کے آخری لمحات بیت رہے ہیں اور دروازے پہ دق الباب ہوتا ہے, تو جناب سیدہ ایک دفعہ کہتی ہیں کہ آنے والے چلا جا, میرے بابا کی حالت اچھی نہیں ہے, میرے بابا کی طبیعت ٹھیک نہیں ہے, واپس پلٹ جا. تھوڑی دیر بعد کیا دیکھتی ہیں, دوبارہ دروازے پہ کھٹکھٹاہٹ ہوتی ہے. پھر پلٹ کے کہتی ہیں کہ میں نے پہلے بھی کہا تھا کہ بابا کی حالت اچھی نہیں ہے, ابھی وہ کسی سے ملاقات نہیں کر سکتے ہیں, آنے والے واپس پلٹ جا. جب دیکھا کہ دوبارہ کسی نے دروازے کو کھٹکھٹایا تو اس سے پہلے کہ جناب سیدہ جواب دیتی, رسول اللہ نے کہا, اے سیدہ یہ صرف اور صرف تمہارے دروازے کا, تمہارے گھر کا پاس رکھا جا رہا ہے, ورنہ جو شخص آنا چاہتا ہے, جو آنا چاہتا ہے وہ کہیں جانے سے پہلے اجازت طلب نہیں کرتا ہے. کہا یہ کون ہے؟ کہا یہ ملک الموت ہے جو آنا چاہتا ہے اور میری روح کو قبض کرنا چاہتا ہے. بس جناب سیدہ کا یہ سننا تھا. باپ کی جدائی کا جیسے ہی سنا, فراق باپ میں کس طریقے سے رہیں گی, وہ بابا کہ جن کے ساتھ جو جب آتے تھے جانے سے پہلے جناب سیدہ سے مل کے جایا کرتے تھے, اور جب پلٹ کے واپس آیا کرتے تھے سب سے پہلے جناب سیدہ سے ملا کرتے تھے, وہ جو اپنی بیٹی کے اس میں کھڑے ہو جایا کرتے تھے, احترام میں کھڑے ہو جایا کرتے تھے. اتنی محبت اور اتنی شفقت ہے, یقیناً اسی لیے جناب سیدہ کو یہ غم ہے کہ بابا اب اس دنیا میں نہ رہیں گے, بابا اب اس دنیا سے چلے جائیں گے. ارے بابا آپ کے بغیر یہ دنیا کیسی لگے گی. بس یہ کہہ ہی رہی تھیں کہ جناب سیدہ کو ایک دفعہ رسول اللہ نے قریب بلایا اور ان کے کان میں کچھ کہا. جیسے کان میں کچھ کہا, ایک دفعہ مسکراہٹ جناب سیدہ کے چہرے پہ آ گئی. لوگوں نے کہا کہ یہ موت, یہ رسول اللہ کی وفات کا وقت ہے, وقت استحضار ہے, رسول اللہ کی وفات واقع ہونے والی ہے, لیکن اس کے باوجود جناب سیدہ کے چہرے پہ مسکراہٹ ہے. ایک دفعہ دریافت کیا بعد میں کہ آپ کے چہرے پہ مسکراہٹ کیوں آئی. کہا میں غمگین تھی, غم زدہ تھی, باپ کے فراق میں, بابا چلے جائیں گے, لیکن انہوں نے مجھے یہ خبر دی کہ اے سیدہ مجھ سے ملنے سب سے پہلے تم آؤ گی, مجھ سے میرا دیدار سب سے پہلے تمہارے ساتھ ہوگا. میں کہوں گا کون دنیا کا ایسا شخص ہے کہ جو اپنی موت کی خبر سن کے خوش ہوتا ہے. یہ صرف اور صرف جناب سیدہ ہیں کہ جن کو یہ خبر مل رہی ہے, یہ بشارت مل رہی ہے کہ آپ کچھ ہی دنوں کی مہمان ہیں, اب آپ اس دنیا میں نہ رہیں گی. تو اس کے اوپر خوشی کا اظہار کر رہی ہیں. کس طریقے سے خوشی کا اظہار کیا کہ مسکرا دیں, اپنی موت کی خبر سن کے مسکرائی ہیں. بابا کا انتقال ہو جاتا ہے, جیسے ہی انتقال ہوتا ہے مورخین لکھتے ہیں کہ زیادہ فاصلہ نہ تھا, 75 دن ہیں یا 95 دن ہیں. انہی دو روایات کا ملتا ہے کہ جناب سیدہ اس سے زیادہ زندہ نہ رہیں. بابا کے انتقال کے بعد سے یا 75 دن تھے یا 95 دن تھے, اس کے بعد سے آپ کا بھی وصال ہو جاتا ہے. لیکن اس اسنا میں, اس 75 دنوں میں جو مصیبتیں جناب سیدہ کے اوپر ٹوٹیں, کیا کہتی ہوئی نظر آتی ہیں, صبت علی المصائب لو انہا صبت علی الایام سرن لیالیان. ارے مجھ پہ وہ مصائب ٹوٹے کہ اگر دنوں پہ ٹوٹتے تو رات میں تبدیل ہو جاتے. اجرکم اللہ, خدا آپ کو کسی غم میں نہ رلائے سوائے غم آل محمد کے. سن پائیں گے کہ وہ کیا مصائب ہیں کہ جو جناب سیدہ کے اوپر ٹوٹے ہیں۔ ارے سب سے پہلی مصیبت ان کے اوپر یہ ہے کہ جب وہ بابا پہ گریہ کرنا چاہتی ہیں تو لوگوں کو پریشانی ہے، کہتے ہیں اے ابو الحسن، ارے سیدہ سے کہیے کہ رونے کا وقت معین کر لیں، یا صبح رویا کریں یا شام میں رویا کریں۔ ارے یہ ہر وقت گریہ کرتی ہیں۔ امیر المؤمنین نے بیت الحزن کے نام سے ایک جگہ تعمیر کی کہ جو شہر سے دور ہے، بابا کی قبر سے نزدیک ہے، جا کے وہاں پہ جناب سیدہ گریہ کیا کرتی تھیں۔ یہ پہلی مصیبت ہے کہ اس امت کے نبی کی بیٹی اپنے باپ کے اوپر گریہ کرنے سے بھی روکا جا رہا ہے۔ اس سے بڑی مصیبت کیا ہوگی سیدہ کے اوپر؟ دوسری مصیبت سنیے کہ جیسے ہی بابا کا وصال ہوتا ہے، غاصبان حکومت آتے ہیں، غاصبان خلافت دروازے پہ حملہ کرتے ہیں، آگ لگاتے ہیں۔ ارے یہ وہ گھر ہے کہ جس پہ سے گزرتے ہوئے رسول اللہ کہتے تھے السلام علیکہ یا اہل بیت النبوہ، ارے سلام کہتے تھے اہل بیت کے اوپر۔ یہ وہ گھر ہے کہ جس تعظیم میں ملک الموت داخل نہیں ہو رہا، اب اس کے اوپر آگ لائی جا رہی ہے۔ اسی اثنا میں آپ کا پہلو شکستہ ہوتا ہے، جناب محسن شہید کر دیے جاتے ہیں۔ یہ دوسری مصیبت ہے۔ تیسری مصیبت جو جناب سیدہ کے اوپر ہے وہ مصیبت یہ ہے کہ امیر المؤمنین کو کس طریقے سے لے جایا گیا ہے کہ یہاں تک کہ وہ بی بی جو کبھی نرغہ عام میں نہ آئی ہو، آتی ہے دربار میں اور آ کے کہتی ہے اپنا حق کو مانگنے کے لیے کہ ابو الحسن کو چھوڑ دو۔ یہ مصیبتیں ہیں کہ جن کی وجہ سے جناب سیدہ نے کہا صبت علی المصائب لو صبت علی الایام سرنا لیالیان۔ ارے وہ مصیبتیں پڑیں کہ اگر دنوں پہ پڑتی تو راتوں میں تبدیل ہو جاتی۔ بس یہیں سے اس بیوی کے بھی آخری ایام نزدیک آ رہے ہیں۔ وہ وقت آتا ہے کہ جناب سیدہ اپنے بستر مرگ پہ ہیں، امیر المؤمنین نزدیک ہیں، کہتی ہیں کہ اے مولا میری کچھ وصیتیں ہیں، ان وصیتوں کا پاس رکھنا۔ کیا ہیں وصیتیں؟ ارے علی کس طریقے سے آپ کی وصیتوں کا پاس نہ رکھیں گے؟ اے علی میرے بعد بچوں کے ساتھ اچھائی سے پیش آنا۔ ارے ابھی تک بھی اچھائی سے پیش آتے رہے یہ بچے، جناب سیدہ یہ اس گزارش کی ضرورت نہیں۔ ارے یہ امامان امت ہوں گے، یہ سبطِ رسول اکرم ہیں، ان پہ کس طرح کے مظالم ہوں گے۔ ارے کہا میرے جنازے کو رات میں اٹھایا جائے، مجھے شب میں دفنایا جائے، میرے جنازے میں کسی کو شرکت کرنے کی اجازت نہ دی جائے۔ سوال یہاں پہ ہے اور آخری جملہ اور زحمت تمام کہ اس امت کے نبی کی ایک ہی بیٹی ہے اور وہ بیٹی آخری ایام میں یہ کہتی ہوئی نظر آتی ہے کہ میرے جنازے میں کسی کو نہ بلانا، جنازے کو شب کی تاریکی میں اٹھانا، اور علی آپ خود مجھے غسل دیجیے گا اور آپ ہی میری تکفین و تجہیز کا انتظام کیجیے گا۔ اس طریقے سے جناب سیدہ اس دنیا سے گزر جاتی ہیں۔ الا لعنۃ اللہ القوم الظالمین وسیعلم الذین ظلموا ای منقلب ینقلبون۔